all my people, and if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botch Bots and Share Shots. I'm your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and joining me today is an alumni and student of the Monster Factory. You've seen it on Apple TV Plus on the docu-series The Monster Factory. Protege of Danny Cage. He is our boy Twitch. Twitch, thanks for coming on and chatting about some wrestling with me, brother. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Chef by trade, mark by choice. I love it. That's great. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always fun to be part of one of these things, you know.
We were chopping it up before we got going, and I was like, I gotta hit record quick. I gotta
because I was prepared for that to all go away very quickly.
So looking at it, man, you guys were hot. The TV show debuted a few months ago. Everything kind of blew up for you. It's been a long time coming for that. But like I said, this is more so centric for you. So let's start with your origin story, man. I'm a little bit older than you are. I always say I started at the tail end of the NWA days, early days of WCW. I'm from Nashville down south. So we were, capital R pro wrestling. What did you grow up watching? What's like your earliest memories of pro wrestling?
So I was kind of a late bloomer in the sense that like a lot of kids started watching wrestling when they were around like 6 or 7. I didn't start watching wrestling until I was in 5th grade. Not to make anybody feel old, but I started watching wrestling, I'd say 2008, 2009. So I remember the big feud at the time was, I think it was just about to be WrestleMania 24 or just got done being WrestleMania 24. So I was only allowed to watch Friday Night SmackDown. No wrestling school night. I was staying late for wrestling on a school night. So I wasn't able to watch Raw, wasn't able to watch ECW unless it was in the summertime. So Friday Night SmackDown was my jam. Loved Edge and Undertaker, Deuce and Domino, like Deuce and Domino versus John Morrison and The Miz. I think I was right around the tail end of Jesse and Festus. And then like I was a huge, like my first favorite wrestler was Jeff Hardy. And I lucked out because like he was hot at the time. And like I also do a lot of my own artwork as well. I'd say that Jeff Hardy was one of the first people that proved that you could kind of do wrestling and art and music and all that other stuff. And just, he's a Renaissance man. And I dug that. And, he was, I'm called Twitch because I have Tourette syndrome. I was diagnosed pretty early with a lot more, with like a laundry list of other things. I have ADHD, anxiety, depression. I got the TISM, that as well. I'm TISM'd up. Thank you for autism for those that, for not hammering. We get it. And so I always felt kind of different. So seeing somebody like Jeff Hardy, who would come out here, he'd got the colored hair, he'd have the awesome face paint, the armbands. He would move in like a weird way, and he would just throw himself at people, man. Like, I lived vicariously through that on watching him on Friday nights. So that was like my first foray into pro wrestling. And then I would say, it's funny because like the big feud at the time was Jeff Hardy and CM Punk around like when, and believe it or not, I used to freaking hate Punk, dude. I really did. For those of you that have watched the docu-series, that changed. We'll get into that in a little bit. But I love Jeff Hardy. I hated CM Punk. But like it was only WWE for a little bit. I kind of fell out of it a little bit in like middle school because I joined the wrestling team and my parents didn't. First, they thought that I was going to like try and body slam somebody, but I was like this scrawny kid. But also, growing up with all these different things, and also we didn't know that I was autistic until I was well done in high school. So like it was just I was walking around undiagnosed for a while. And my parents were a little worried that like me being like an open, just out there wrestling fan was just going to give kids another reason to bully me. So I stopped watching for a little bit. But when I started watching again, thanks to CM Punk and the pipe bomb, and he brought up in those promos Ring of Honor and New Japan Pro Wrestling, and so that's when I started to kind of delve into. Thankfully, I was able to kind of get better YouTube privileges, and I was looking up stuff like Ring of Honor and New Japan and Chikara and Jersey All Pro Wrestling, and this treasure trove of independent pro wrestling. So like my first foray into independent pro wrestling was watching Bryan Danielson and Nigel McGuinness for the Pure title. I think that was what also definitely influenced my in-ring style. Discovering El Generico and Kevin Steen, their rivalry. Even later on when I got into high school, discovering what PWG was, and just falling in love with the art or many art forms of pro wrestling.
Looking at your career, everybody has to start somewhere too. The exposure led you. Okay, eventually look down. You had that self conversation that one day, and you said, fuck it, I want to be a pro wrestler. I want to do it. You eventually met Danny. You got hooked up at the Monster Factory. Everything started there, so to speak. But what was the process like leading up to you getting to the school, deciding that's where you wanted to go? That was the track you wanted to go on.
So, I remember, I live in Levittown, Pennsylvania, and there's a mall that, there's this place called George's Cars and Collectibles, and they had a store in the mall. They also had they had a few different locations, but they would also always have like wrestlers come in. And I forgot that he was even going to be there, but Shawn Michaels was there at a signing, and I was just there at the mall with like one of my best friends, and I see this dude, like a big afro. He's walking on the upstairs concourse of the mall, and he's got two belts. He's got a replica. I believe maybe it might have just been the one. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, but he had a replica Intercontinental Championship belt and a replica Winged Eagle belt. And I just very wryly go, so I take it you're here for the Shawn Michaels signing, and he goes, oh, what gave it away? And we got to talking about wrestling. And I was still kind of like in and out. I wasn't watching as regularly as I wanted to. I think it made me start watching it regularly again. His name's Ferran Derry, and he's now the play-by-play commentator for the Monster Factory. When I met him, I was 15 years old, and he had a radio show called Pro Wrestling Weekly. And the radio station was like a 5-minute bike ride from my house. So I guess, I didn't really intern, but I was interning because I wasn't getting paid. But I was doing radio when I was like 15. I was on the air, and you can look those up on YouTube. I would kindly ask that you don't, though, because I had a voice like a little flute, to quote John Mulaney. And so I remember my first independent show was with Ferran because he said, oh, I'm going to this Monster Factory show tonight. And I looked on the card. I'm like, oh, is anyone on the card that like I would know? And he goes, well, so it's going to be Colt Cabana is on the card. And, the pipe bomb, Punk mentions Colt Cabana. And also I had watched the Best in the World documentary. And also Blue Meanie was going to be there, as well as, I'm trying to remember, there's anybody else. So I know that it was Colt Cabana and Cliff Compton versus the Legion of Anarchy, which was Luis the Punisher Martinez and Brawley. And Luis the Punisher Martinez would go on to become one of my trainers, and two, he's now Damian Priest in WWE. So senior Money in the Bank. Very proud of my coach. And
that's a pretty great plug to be able to throw in there, by the way. Like, that's a hell of a name to be like, oh yeah, by the way, Damian Priest.
Here's the thing, like, I'm starting to feel like the Forrest Gump of wrestling because of like who I've run into or who I've kind of like had the privilege of like interacting with. And like, so I was trained when I started at the Monster Factory. I was trained by well, it was Danny Cage. I was trained by Blue Meanie, QT Marshall, Damian Priest, and Riddle was still there when I was training there. Like he was still like it was right. It was like about, I'd say within that next year he would have gotten signed to Evolve. So like that, I also when I was training there, Preston Vance, Nick Camarado. Christ, I'm trying to. There's too many names that I cross paths with, and it's something you look back on, and it's like really really cool. But I remember going or asking Fran, like, hey, can I ride with you to the show? And we go up. It's my first ever indie show I've ever been to, or no, it might have been my second. Sorry, the first one I had gone to, the place ended up closing down, and the second show. You hear these stereotypes about the indies, like intermission, or like the show starts 15 minutes late, intermission runs 30 minutes too long, nothing goes on time, and then you go to the Monster Factory and it's run professionally. Like I'm like this, it just felt like everything was just a well-oiled machine, just running in and out and in and out. And I remember meeting Danny Cage and looking at how the place was run, and the building they ran shows out of was the same building they trained out of. And I'm like, if I had ever, I remember promising myself if I ever had the chance to be a pro wrestler, I was going to take a shot. If I ever had the chance. And then I'm looking at this building and I'm like, well, this is my chance. And the more and more it started to like click in my head of like, this could really happen. I remember I sat down. So I was about 15 when I met Danny. I think around the time a few months later, I'm sitting down at the kitchen table with my parents and I go, hey, I think I want to give this a shot. And, I expected there to be a lot more of a blowback. Not that I wanted there to be like an argument, but, my parents, they want what's best for me. And I can understand sometimes that, like, out of fear, some people can be like, absolutely not. I don't want you doing that. You could get hurt. And they were like, well, there's a lot worse things you could be wanting to do with your life. But you got to show us that you're serious about it. You got to be committed. And they helped foot the bill for training. Like they helped put down the deposit, but I saved up a good amount of money as well. And it was July 6th, 2015 was my first day of training at the Monster Factory. And, the rest, as they say, is history. It was a very, man, I'm trying to remember what it felt like even walking through those doors for the first time. Like, it's so weird. It seems like yesterday and it seems like a lifetime ago at the same time.
It's
like
almost
certain
8
moments.
years. Yeah. Like, that's crazy to think about. That's damn near a decade in the business now, working in and out.
I know, right? I got to get my shit together. Sorry, I don't know if you can curse on here or not.
I put the E no matter what, man. I work with pro wrestlers day in and day out. I know I never fully am aware of what you guys will say to me. So I always put the E just to be safe. So one of the things, you said you walked through that door, Damian Riddle, Vance, everybody that's been in and out of that building throughout the history. Walking in, you've had, you mentioned the Tourette's, you mentioned some of the other stuff. How did you embrace all of that to kind of put your foot in the door and go, okay, I can do this even with my Tourette's and stuff. I'm like, we were joking before we started, the first pro wrestler with Tourette's and you're killing it. Like, how did you put the stamp on it to be that person?
So Twitch was a nickname that used to be, there's an episode there was like this surfer episode of SpongeBob when I was younger, where SpongeBob and Patrick get stranded on a desert island or something. And there's one of these characters, they called him Twitch. And they go, well, why do they call you Twitch? And he like does like a tick or something. He goes, oh, I don't know. But he's like ticking and stuff. And I remember even watching that as a kid, and I'm just like, oh, this can't be good. And kids started calling me that, and it just stuck. And I used to hate that name. Honestly, I used to really Hate it. And then I remember I was watching the first ever episode of Game of Thrones, and there's a scene with Tyrion Lannister, who's played by Peter Dinklage, and he's an imp, or a little person. I think that's the correct term. I hope. And then there was Jon Snow, who was the bastard, and in the way that in the setting of Game of Thrones, those are two of the worst things you can be. If you're a bastard, your parents were never wed, so it's like dishonorable. If you're an imp, you're looked at as a freak. And Jon Snow has this chip on his shoulder, and Tyrion Lannister is much older and wiser, and he's the brother-in-law of the king. And he goes, let me give you some advice, bastard. He goes, never forget what you are, because the rest of the world certainly will not. So wear it like armor, and it can never be used to hurt you. And I remember sitting there, and I was also, at the time, I was also thinking, like, if I was going to be a wrestler, what would I be? And that definitely helped me lean into it more, because, I thought, there's no other gimmick you can give me that's gonna have Tourette. That's not gonna have Tourette's. They could be like, oh, we're gonna give you a pirate gimmick. I'd be like, he's gonna make horsey noises. I'm just gonna let you know now. It's no. You just let me. I always explain to people what my wrestling character is, because it's who I am in real life. Is just imagine Peter Parker if he had Tourette's. Like that. I remember it was like, I think it was within my first year of training. It was Boxing Day. It was the day after Christmas. And it was a Saturday, and at the time he was Steve Cutler. It's Steve Macklin of TNA. But he was one of I think he was Danny's first student to ever get signed to a contract. And he was home for the holiday, and he was just stopping in, so we were going to be training with him. And at the time, I used to carry a notebook with me, and I used to just write down I used to write down like spot for spot what the drills would be, any little tidbits of advice. And Cutler would just be going like, hey, Parker, you paying attention to this? I'm like, who's he talking to? And he was talking to me. And he's like, Jesus, Parker, what are you writing in there? I'm like, why do you keep calling me Parker? And he goes, because you look like Peter Parker writing for the Daily Bugle right now. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I do. And then I remember sitting in the theater, and I'm watching Spider-Man Far From Home. And there's the scene where Nick Fury gives Tony Stark's glasses to Peter, and he goes, weary is the head that wears the crown. Tony told me you wouldn't get that because it's not a Star Wars reference. And I'm just sitting in the theater, and I'm like, well, yeah, I think I might be Peter Parker. Shit, he's got a point. It's all my autism is, I'm not Rain Man, I'm Ring Man. One is the joke that I like to make. Like, my autism was wasted on stand-up comedy, pro wrestling, movie and TV quotes. Which is a good thing because I don't forget spots. It's a bad thing because, well, I didn't finish college. So I'm just being honest with you. I always make the joke, I'm autistic enough to be socially awkward, not enough to be good at math. So, but yeah, like, that's my gimmick. It's who I am. And there's maybe there's certain aspects that you can I guess stretch the suspension of disbelief, but who I am is like, what you see is what you get. So as the character in wrestling grows, it's really more so just me as a person growing as well. And that's like I think the plus and like the pro and the con of it. So I started wrestling when I was 17. And this business really does raise you pretty quick. Like, I think I learned more about life from pro wrestling than I did from school. And I don't mean like, learning how to do a body slam. It's like the in-between stuff, the lessons that you learn in like the business aspect of it. There's the thing that Dan always tells us, like, don't count other people's money. and not like in a fiscal sense, right? It's more so like, there's going to be people that are going to get opportunities before you that maybe started training after you. Or maybe they had only been training for a year and it took you like 5 years before you got looked at. Don't count other people's money, because if you're not focusing, so if you're focusing on what other people have, it's not going to get you anywhere near where you want to be. If you want what that person has, don't focus on what they have. You got to focus on what you have, because that's the only way you're going to get where you need to go. Another thing he always says is like, it's not your part in the movie yet, which is another thing. Like, how come this person's getting more opportunities than I am? I'm way better than this person. And it's not your part in the movie yet. Your scene hasn't come up. Doesn't mean that your scene won't come. It just means it hasn't happened yet. And that's helped me, not even like outside of wrestling. I'm at the age now where people my age, friends I grew up with, they're getting married. They're starting to have kids. I'm still living with my parents. Not that there's anything wrong with that. As you can see, my setup's pretty freaking sweet. I mean, come on. But it is this thing of like, whenever I think, man, and I'm trying to be realistic. It's not just a delusional thing of like, obviously you have to put in the work if you want to get where you want to be. But just because it's not paying off as quickly as you thought doesn't mean it won't. So those two things have definitely helped me just with pro wrestling and learning about that sort of stuff. It's taught me a lot about life.
Great outlook on all. When I was doing the research, trying to do my due diligence, I read in an article about it that Danny said the filming for the Monster Factory started as early as like 2015 in some cases, with some of the early film crews coming out.
It was in infancy, I would say. They started. They wanted to film like 90 seconds, just like a sizzle reel. It was just a production crew. They wanted to show like what they were able to do, like their calling card. And then they came in and they saw the school and they were like, oh, wow, we could do a lot more with this. So they did like a 15-minute mini documentary that was like editor's choice on Vimeo. And I was the opening, like on the opening segment, I did a promo. I was actually about a year in, so it was 2016.
So when you look at that, though, that's that very infancy level of your career, that very, the term green comes to mind when people talk about it. You were just coming in, and as soon as you start training, they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to put this camera in your face, and we're going to film everything you do, good, bad, or indifferent. Like, how did that hit you mentally to know everything you were doing at this very, like, it's a very crucial part of your training, man. Like, as soon as you start, pretty much everything's getting documented. How was that for you?
I'll be honest with you. It wasn't that. I don't want to say it wasn't that intimidating, but I wasn't scared because, so like, I think I was just itching to kind of like show what I could do. I was always better at the time. I was always more confident on the mic than I was in the ring. In the ring, I feel like I really started to hit my stride within the past like 2-3 years. But I was always comfortable cutting a promo. So like, and that goes back to like my if I had to say my top 5 favorite wrestlers of all time, it's Jeff Hardy, Punk, Danielson, Moxley, and Sami Zayn. Punk and Moxley, I would say, are the two biggest influences when it comes to promos. Those are the guys that because they just, it wasn't your stereotypical wrestling promo. It was they would just talk. It felt more like a monologue from a movie. And I'm a bit of a like, I'd say I'm a semi cinephile. I enjoy my fair share of movies, and I took like a few acting classes when I was younger. So like that, I was no stranger to that sort of thing. So that part of it was just like, I just had to, you gotta be prepared. And I always had, actually, I had this idea for a promo, anyway, and it just lucked out that the stars aligned the way that they did, because like if they had come in a day earlier or a day later, maybe I wouldn't have had it. But I had this promo about like, you know, because I don't think I'd actually had my first match yet either. So like that was the detriment. I started training the summer going into my senior year of high school. So when school started back up again, I was only really able to do Friday nights, and kind of like just barely. So I feel like if I was able to go to training, like I started really heavy in the summer, like with the training, and then I had to fall back a little bit because I didn't drive yet, and the guy that I was relying on for rides, he worked at FedEx, so it was once like only Friday nights during the fall, and then during the holidays, there was no way I was going to be able to get to training because he was like working during the busiest time of the year for them. So like, unfortunately, I feel like my progress, I didn't have my first match until January of 2017.
You eventually. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So like, I had this promo in my head of like, and also like I felt like, people didn't expect me to stick around as long as I had at the time. And I understand that, a lot of people, Danny has this another saying of Danny's, people are more in love with the idea of being a pro wrestler than they are with being an actual wrestler. They like the idea of telling their friends, oh yeah, I'm a pro wrestler. But when it comes time to actually put in the work that goes into being a pro wrestler, they don't want to do it. And I was 17 years old. There weren't really a lot of other kids that were training there that were my age. So they just expected me to like try it for the summer and then, I don't know, call it quits. And, I was determined to show that I wasn't just going to do that. Like, this meant something to me. So, yeah, I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, for lack of a better term. And that promo I lucked out.
How was it the first time you got to stretch your legs? As somebody who spent so much time at the Monster Factory, when you finally had a chance to branch out and do something outside of Monster Factory Pro Wrestling, like Dropkick Depression, great promotion, blending that bridge for mental health, kind of raising awareness. Like, how cool was it to be able to get out and stretch your legs as a pro wrestler and do something outside of Monster Factory?
It was fun. I met Jeff through the Monster Factory, and then I also met his wife Tara, and I love them both so much. And Dropkick Depression it definitely had like, a thing I learned about us chasing this crazy dream of ours. The passion's going to come first a lot of times. A lot of the times just starting out, you're not going to be doing this for the money. Like, obviously, I want this to be my full-time living. But also, I want to have fun doing it. I want to be around people that I love being around. And I'm fortunate that, like, the locker, like, I'd say the locker rooms that I'm consistently in are the ones that you're not just looking forward to it because you get to wrestle. You're looking forward to it because you genuinely enjoy the people in that locker room. So, like, any locker room that's been like a one and done thing, or maybe it just didn't work out, I always look at it as, well, maybe it just wasn't meant to be. But like Dropkick Depression, Catalyst, Camp Leapfrog, or High Tension Wrestling, I genuinely looked forward to going there because, like, I'm going to see all my friends. We're going to have a fun time. It's like, you're going to be like telling your friends, like, oh, you want to hear what happened this weekend? Like what we were all talking about. And it's that camaraderie that I so desperately wanted when I was a kid. Like, pro wrestling gave me this thing I felt like I always wanted, but didn't think I ever had, which was like a chance to be accepted and not have to change. And like, in the sense of like, I didn't have to listen to music I didn't want to listen to. I didn't have to wear clothes I didn't want to wear. I could just be me and be accepted for who I was. You know, they people take me as I am, and they love me for it. And that's something that, like, that's what I'm thankful for the most. So, you know, I think a lot of the times branching out of the factory, or branching out anywhere in general, you're always worried about, like, how are you going to be perceived? Because the Monster Factory is a very prestigious school, but not everyone always believes in the prestige. Some people, there's a wrestler I trained with named Royal Money, and he would say some people, there's two reactions to this shirt, you know, the Monster Factory. When you wear this shirt, people are either going to respect you and take you seriously, or they're going to want to try and expose you to make the school make it look like, see, they're not all that. They're not all like that they claim to be. Thankfully, I don't think I've run into that second group, but it was just something I was always cognizant of because, you know, socially, I was always a very awkward person. So, like, going to a new promotion was always kind of like the first day of school. So thankfully, when I started branching out a little bit more, there were people that I knew that were in those locker rooms. So I would definitely say that again, I've lucked out and I've been thankful to be a part of those locker rooms. And then it's been a very, for the most part, graceful transition into going to outside promotions.
There's more layers to this than just wrestling as well. Found a music career. I got to see some of that, you know, guitar, a lot of the stuff you've done with that. How's the music career going in 2023 outside of the wrestling stuff?
So I actually only started taking outside bookings in 2021, I think, for music, because, not to sound too cynical, but like, music is medicine for me. It's too therapeutic. You'll almost never see me without earbuds in when I'm out and about, at work, at the gym, social situations where, you know, like, if I'm by myself and if I'm walking into like a store, I'm gonna have my earbuds in. You know, with the autism and expressing my feelings, or like I can feel, like, I know what emotions I'm feeling. Sometimes it's hard for me to explain how I'm feeling. So music is very much like my translator for that. Like, the music that I listen to, it's all very personal. And one of my biggest fears was, like, you see a lot of these musicians when they start, you know, it's all well and good, but then, like, eventually producers and lawyers and agents will, you know, kind of get their hands in their stuff and be like, well, maybe you should try this, or maybe you should make your sound this. Like, the thing I hate is when, like, I love, like, I love the Lumineers, I love Mumford and Sons. I love that kind of music. I like acoustic music. I like music that tells a story. I don't want to say I hate it, but I was not the biggest fan of Mumford and Sons' most recent album, because it kind of felt like it turned to synth and like electronic music, and it took away what made me fall in love with them. Is like, not just the stories of the songs, but like the sound. And I feel like that was very much, my speculation is that was very much like a producer's decision. And my thing is always, you know, because music is so personal to me, I want to play what I want to play because it means something to me. Like, I'm not good with taking requests. I'll do my best. I try to not be like a stickler, and I try to not be like rude, but like, because my skill on guitar is very limited. My voice has always been what carried it. I've been singing since before I could talk, but like, I would do open mics and stuff, but I never wanted to, like, I know it sounds crazy, but it's like, I never wanted to really, you know, go big with it. But I always felt like it would be okay. I would be okay with, like, performing in bars. So then I started reaching out, and, you know, I've been doing I just have like a steady bar gig, and then I pick up a few extra ones every now and then. It's been going really well. For this month, for July, I just locked in 2 extra dates that I didn't expect to lock in, but you know, obviously I want wrestling to be how I make my full-time living, but like I said, like Jeff Hardy, like if I can do a thing where like maybe I'm touring with the company, and then maybe I stay in that town an extra day and find a bar where I can perform at, that's the dream, you know.
This is one of my favorite questions for anybody when I ask them this. If you had the opportunity, we're going to hop in a time machine. We're going to go back. You know, we mentioned it. It's been 8 years now almost. Coming up on it, 8 years and 2 days, actually. You said the 5th, right?
6.
6. So 8 years and 3 days. Let's go back day 1, night 1. What advice do you give, you know, rookie Twitch as he gets ready to walk into the Monster Factory? Like, what do you go back and you tell that guy now?
I'll tell him the same thing that Danny told me. Shut the fuck up, Lucas. Just keep quiet. Just shut up. Shut up. Take your time. And for the love of God, start hitting the gym a little bit earlier than like I know everybody else is going to be telling you, you know, hit the gym, and you're going to think that it's like, oh, yeah, I get it, my time. But then I tell you something, 2020 is going to hit, that pandemic's going to happen. You're going to, all of a sudden, you're going to go from 175 to 227, and you're going to really be running up that hill to work that off. So just start hitting the gym now and get into a consistent workout thing so we don't have to. Because you don't drink, you don't smoke, you don't do drugs, you eat your feelings, all right? You always have eaten your feelings. It's the way it is. It's the way it's probably going to be for a while, so you need to counteract that shit now, all right? You got the notebook, start writing it down.
That may be the best answer.
Sometimes I just go back and think, like, I wish I had the wit that I have now. Because, like, I think, obviously you don't look in the past, but, like, sometimes you just wish you could go back in life and kind of start from a point where, like, but knowing what you know now and, like, all the, you know, the knowledge, the wit, and the sass, and you just think things might have been a lot better if I had had this version of me in high school. It would have been a lot more fun. I wouldn't have just been the quiet kid. I would have been the kid that fell asleep to Opie and Anthony. So if somebody tried to sass him, he would have just obliterated them. Now, granted, he would have been sent to the principal's office a lot more often because, well, you can't say half the things that Jim Norton says and not get in trouble. Just saying.
It's par for the course.
Yeah, probably. Then again, I probably would also be the same socially awkward dweeb that I was back then.
I feel
but
that.
Just thinking, yeah.
On a spiritual level.
We always like to say, yeah, you just like to be like, oh, yeah, well, you know, if I was there back then, it would have been real different. And no, it wouldn't have. You would have been the same. Somebody would have went, shut up, dork, and you would have been like, okay, sorry. No, it's fine.
It was the notebook comment for me because I'm you can see them lined up on my bookcase. I've been a notebook guy for years. So I know when you said, I know you have that notebook, write it down. I was like, that would be me. I would look at myself 5-10 years ago and go, I know you have your notebook, write this shit down. So yeah. I respect the hell out of that.
Oh yeah. Another thing I would say is like, start reading like a little bit more. Because you used to read, and then you discover the Xbox, and you don't read as much. So just go back to reading like a little bit more. Just try and like give off the illusion that you're smart, that you're intelligent. That's just more so for a life thing than wrestling. But you know, to each their own.
All right, man. This is it. This is the part that, you know, I do it the same way every time. It always ends with 5 random that have nothing to do with wrestling. You ready?
Hell yeah. Are these like rapid fire, or can I give like a detailed answer if I need to?
Most of them are pretty rapid fire. They're pretty simple. All right. Question number 1. What's your favorite TV show?
Oh, here's the thing. I'm one of those infuriating people that can't have one favorite anything. I've been able to narrow it down with movies, but you know what? I'll say that maybe not my favorite TV show, but my favorite one that I've watched recently is the show Banshee. It's on HBO Max. The guy who plays Homelander in The Boys is the star in it, and it's really, really good. You know, I've always loved Family Guy or anything funny. You know, like it's always Seinfeld, obviously. George, because if you can't see, it's George Costanza doing the timeless art of seduction. It's hanging over my bedroom. So yeah.
All right, well, 2 favorites back to back then. Do you have a favorite season of the year?
Probably fall and or spring.
Typically coincide.
It's a killer. It kills my allergies, but on top of my regular depression, I also have the seasonal depression where it just goes. I call it my 3-month fight with the big sad, where I just got to take haymaker after haymaker. So like it's the feeling before that or after that is always nice, because I hate extreme cold and I hate extreme heat.
Not made for cold at all.
Yeah.
Question number 3. Do you have a favorite vacation spot?
A consistent one. I mean, I guess it's favored by default, but Ocean City, New Jersey, we would go down there every year as a family. And like I like going on the boardwalk and stuff like that. I mean, my best vacation spot right now is just my room. This is like my little sanctuary. It's got my TV, it's got my wrestling figures, my comic books. It's just all my stuff's here. So I like being here.
Your own little bubble. I respect
Oh
the
yeah,
hell out of
this
that,
is my bat cave. Yeah.
That's how my office is. All right, last 2. Chef by trade, mark by choice. I got to throw some food questions in. Question number 4. Do you think pineapple goes on pizza?
Yes. Or here's the thing. I've had it. I didn't hate it. You know, there's wars going on, so I feel like there's things that we could focus on there. Like, I feel like there's worse things to happen. It's like, hey, you guys know that there's like people dying every day, right? Someone wants to put pineapple on their pizza. Freaking let them. Let them live their life. Let them enjoy things. Just don't dip it in ranch dressing.
That's a stretch. Pizza and ranches. Question number 5. Do you think a hot dog is a sandwich?
I don't know. I don't know. Let me ask you a question. Does ketchup go on a hot dog?
Oh, that's tough, man. I don't think so.
Because I think it does.
Okay.
And I think because
Okay.
you were just very like, all right, man. All right, baby. It's okay.
See, like we said, we reverted 5-10 years ago. Like, you're right, man. I'll put ketchup on my hot dog. Fuck, my bad.
Like people will ridicule me or say it's childish to put just like ketchup on a hot dog, but it's also like, hey, buddy, my goal, hopefully, is to make a living by play fighting in spandex. Yes, I'm a tall child. So give me that freaking Heinz and give me the hot dog. And I don't want to hear shit for the rest of the night. Is a hot dog a sandwich? I don't know. I really don't know. What else would it be? That's like saying it's a Pop-Tart ravioli.
I got told the other day that it was a fucking taco, bro. Like, I really don't know anymore either. Like, everything is different now. See? Just took it off the rails with that comment.
Because, like, it made me angry, but also, like, he might have a point, and that's the thing that's the most infuriating out of it all. Mm-hmm. But it's like, screw you. It's not
this
a taco.
Is done. We're done now.
And technically, maybe. But, like, how dare you? How dare you? I hope you're proud of yourself. Whoever said that it's a taco, because no me gusta.
No me gusta.
No bueno. It is a hot dog. It's a beef cylinder on a bun. Okay, do with that what you will. I've never seen us. If it's a beef disc, it's a sandwich. Beef cylinder, hot dog. It's its own thing.
First, breaking news right here.
Also, I just really hope somebody just got really disgusted by me saying beef cylinder because I just pulled that one out. I really just pulled that one out of my head.
That's a keeper.
It's a cylinder of meat.
Beef cylinder. All right, Twitch, this is everybody's favorite part, man. I shut the hell up. I don't have to say anything. I let you talk. Plug your stuff. Put yourself over your socials. If you've got a show coming up you want to put on, like, tell us all about it, man. This is your shop.
So follow me on Instagram, Lucas Twitch DiSangro. Follow me on Twitter at Lucas Twitch 318. I have a pro wrestling tees store, so please, if you enjoyed anything that I said or didn't, and just, I don't know, just be a good person and buy a t-shirt, please. ProWrestlingTees.com/Mr. Fan Spastic. And oh yeah, I have a YouTube channel. I believe that let me just pull that up. I feel like I should have been more prepared on that end. My posting to the YouTube channel is sporadic, but we're getting there. So my YouTube channel is Lucas Twitch DiSangro. And yeah, just I'll post up my music gigs and my wrestling stuff on I'm probably the most active on my Instagram, but I need to beef up those numbers on Twitter. So help a guy out.
You heard it here. Go follow our boy Twitch.
Thank
you. Man,
you.
I've had a blast talking to you, hanging out, chatting about some wrestling. I really appreciate you stopping by tonight, man.
I appreciate you for having me. Let's do it again sometime soon.
We absolutely will. For Twitch, I am the Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.